and then we'll get things started. I'm going to fire a few questions to you just to get things moving.
So I'm Liz Heal. I currently work at Gregory Distribution. It's one of the UK's largest haulage companies. So we have got 4 separate businesses. Our turnover is around 400 million. My amazing team who are in the audience, so I excuse them in advance for giving me later on questions. We have fill around 100 to 130 vacancies a month between 5 of us. So we have a massive amount of growth, a little bit of turnover, be drivers, warehouse, that type of thing. I've worked in recruitment since the year 2001, so I'm showing my age. And I've done agency, all different sorts of things, but we recruit anything and everything. But we are finding that the market is getting tougher and tougher.
Hi everybody, I'm Claire Fennell. I currently work for Utility Warehouse. We are what we call a multi-service utility business. We provide a number of different utility services, so we're FTSE 250. I recruit for all of our non-operational, so the opposite to Liz in terms of volume. I've worked in recruitment for more years than I'm going to admit to, but across a real range of sectors. So I've worked in retail, legal, currently utilities, startups, FTSEs, publishing, so but industry agnostic, but common theme has always been kind of core functions and exec level hiring.
I'm Chance Montgomery. I'm the partner support manager for a company called Bridge of Hope Careers, and we work with 105 charities and 25 non-Russell Group universities to help get their system impacted candidates facing inclusive employers. And today we have about 76,000 diverse candidates from across the board, neurodiverse, veterans, returning citizens from prison, disabled, all live and looking for jobs this morning as I checked, and about almost 700,000 worldwide. And we do our work from a real point of passion. You know, I have some lived experience myself, and so really, really care about this space and hope to bring that human element or keep that human element in our mindsets while we move forward on things like AI, etc., because that's very important to keep at the forefront because families are involved.
Thank you both. You all, rather. So we know what our panelists are. I think just to get things started, let's give them a warm welcome. Big round of applause, please. Thank you. Okay, so feel free to take the first question, and I'm not going to point anyone out, but obvious one. First question is, what emerging trends do you see in 2025, and how are you, shaping your team to adjust, I guess, or adapt to that? Who would like to take the first one?
So from our side of things, we have to flex up and flex down. We can't necessarily predict what's going to happen within our market because we do anything from a cleaner, a picker-packer, a driver, up to directors. The thing that we are finding though is we are noticing that the candidates are still driving the marketplace. They are dictating everything. We noticed it changed probably 6 months ago that the employers started to have a little bit more of a stance on it. So us as hirers were finding it a little bit easier. I've noticed, and the team have noticed, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it's flipped back again. This morning on the way here, I had a message via email from somebody that's been counter-offered for a role that's taken 8 weeks to fill. I'm sat there obviously using very polite words in the car, trying to get hold of the manager, so on and so forth. We try and alleviate everything, but the problem we've got is because we do have a high turnover, it's sadly the industry that we're in, no matter what we try to do to change our culture and everything, we find people will leave for 5p, 10p, then come back 3 weeks later. I don't know if anyone else has those problems. Anyone want to stick a hand up if they have those problems that people leave and then come back a few weeks later? Not that many, okay. I think it's more the industry for the driver side of things than anything else. We have to flex up and down every 3 to 4 weeks. We have weekly team meetings over what we're finding our latest hotspots. And we change our marketing strategy for every single role across the country, whether or not it's Inverness, Aberdeen, Aberystwyth, so on and so forth. But I am noticing that we're probably going to hit a bit of a trend, especially with national minimum wage. It wasn't as high as what I expected. But I am going to say that if you guys have anything, does anybody else work within the warehousing, industrial, quite high volume industry, or is it more, yeah? Have you noticed that there's any changes? Yeah? We're expecting to hit a candidate shortage around March, April. And we are already starting to drive to become more proactive as a team than reactive and actually trying to get ourselves out there, hence LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So all I'd say is the trend that I'm starting to notice is that if you do volume recruitment, especially within the haulage industrial industries, please expect a pinch point.
Thanks, Liz.
From my perspective, my team's perspective, we went through a really big growth journey over the last 5 years. So the team were really geared up for volume hiring, lots, similar levels actually in terms of customer service hiring, some hundreds of people every month. This year, the strategy's changed completely, and the business, whilst continuing to grow, is not continuing to grow headcount. So we've got a real focus actually on how do we redeploy rather than hire. So the sort of ongoing trend for us as a team is how do we expand what we do from just putting bums on seats. That is no longer going to be just our role. So having to work with a smaller team. So we've just been through a restructure, which has been quite painful, and I'm sure others are experiencing that at the moment. And yeah, how we kind of gear ourselves up to work with lower volumes, which gives us an opportunity to do more high quality sourcing and proactive work, but also getting involved much more in internal mobility and how we can reuse our skills into an internal market. So that's a real kind of ongoing journey that we're on, and as a team kind of needing to upskill ourselves in more than just recruitment. But the other trend that I'm already seeing, I think is just going to be continue across the market, is volumes of applications. Again, I don't know if other people are experiencing this, but I posted a data analyst role a couple of weeks back, and I had over 600 applications within a week, which is just blew my mind. And actually, I would say probably about 75% of those applications on paper had the skill set that we needed. So I think finding ourselves just sucked into this world of needing to CV screen all the time, and not be able to kind of step away from that and go out and find the right people. So I think, to be the first to say the word, AI is really going to affect us, but how I'm seeing it at the moment is more from the impact of the candidate market on us, but then how we respond to that, how we make our systems, our processes more effective with a smaller team to deal with a volume of applications for less roles is an interesting challenge.
Cool. And Madonna thing. So what we're seeing a lot of is social value being the driver for a lot of things in this space, and a lot of our clients come to us like, how can we sort of turbocharge social value, and inclusive hiring's the best way by far in doing that. But what happens with that is that it does lose that human touch a piece, and we've been concerned that if social mobility in this space is driven by social value and targets, then you lose that balance mindset, that equilibrium of thought on social mobility. And when we're dealing with human lives, it's really important to, yes, indeed, embrace the tech, the AI, meet the targets, etc., turbocharge your social value, but really understand that these are people's lives, and always bring that to the center of your thought, so you have a balanced mindset, because that is just one of the most valuable things that you can do in this space, whilst AI, social value, and all these things are pushing really hard. And so one of the things that we go out and do is create Learn with Empathy masterclasses, where you bring those real lived experience stories into play and get people to really consider the lives behind the candidates as well.
Yeah, we talked about this, Charles, didn't we, in terms of one of the things that worries me with the volume applications versus bringing in lots of automations is how it is the risk, I suppose, to overlooking candidates because you're so focused on just screening them against a set criteria, and how we balance that in our processes going forwards is something that I think is going to be a real ongoing challenge where you're going to have to balance the resource that is needed to be a human in our processes, but also to recognise the humans. It's a real challenge.
Yes.
So it's only going to be a few minutes before AI was brought up. That was going to be a nice segue into, how AI is going to evolve, I guess, and what's going to mean for our functions. I just want to bring in a quote because I'm semi-prepared for this. This is again from the CEO of Korn Ferry. Anyone would think I work for them at the minute. It says, as we look to 2025, organisations are faced with a striking balance between these competing factions, technology and human connection, efficiency and personalisation, flexibility and structure. So my question to you as a panel is, the technology and human connection, how do we, with the AI, I guess, how do we ensure that we're getting the best of the technology that's available to us, but still delivering that human connection and personalisation that we know our candidates want?
When we were having our call the other day, we've actually got an all singing, all dancing system. It's really good. It can be automated. It can do everything. I turned it off, much to everybody's disgust, because one of the things that we noticed is the more that we were sending out the emails to invite the candidates for the scheduled interview times and so on and so forth, we were actually losing them, because one of the things that we noticed was that it might not necessarily, the times we could do might not be the times that fitted in their diaries. And then they weren't necessarily them going, oh yeah, I'll call you back and this, that and the other, but then someone else called them up and beat us to them. So around 3-4 years ago when COVID, Brexit and everything hit, our vacancies hit due to acquisition and growth within the business around 500. So we were spending a lot of the time, we decided that's it, we're going to turn back in, we've got a phone, we've got a mobile phone, we've got text messages, we've got the easy things that people respond to quicker. They don't necessarily have to do X, Y, and Z, or their email's going to go into their junk folder, which we're finding. So we actually call every single candidate and arrange interviews. We text them if we don't hear from them. We took phone calls this morning driving up. We have actually kind of forgotten AI is taking place at the moment, because we are finding the questions that the candidates want to ask before they come in for interview, they're speaking to a human being, and it is that personal touch. And here, we're the first people that any business speaks to, or not any business, or any candidate speaks to. So we are the face of our business. They can hear the passion in our voices. They'll ask us questions. How long have you been there? What's this like? What's that like? They can actually hear that you actually are happy in your workplace. And that touch for that 4-minute phone call is worth its weight in gold. And that is one of the things that, yes, AI, I love it for job descriptions and certain things. But if I'm honest, a human speaking to a human, no matter how painful it is for us as an in-house recruitment team, we will put more over the candidate experience and making our lives easier, if that makes sense. Because if you get a candidate in the door, how you treat them, how you speak to them, even if they don't get the job, that whole circle will mean that they will either go and say that you're a really good company, even if they don't get the job, they still speak to you 12 months later, or tell your friend, actually, I didn't get the job there, so on and so forth. Or you'll get a nice star rating where you are called a bunch of things on Indeed and the worst company ever. Because obviously, bad word spreads quicker, but I will say that I'm probably going to be the advocate to saying no at the minute for AI, because what we're doing, and I'm not giving away all my secrets, what we're doing is working, and I will say a human to a human touch. I won't change that for the time being unless someone can prove me wrong, so please do.
And building on that, I agree. I think the human to human piece is where we stand out. It's where we differentiate as TA functions. But the things that we're going to be looking at is how do we use some of the automations, and I say automations probably rather than AI, which is a distinction. We're probably not going to get to a point where we've got a bot that's doing everything for us. It's very much about actually going back to some of the basics within our systems to free us up to do the human bits. So, all that time that you spend scheduling interviews, well, actually there's tools in our system to do self-scheduling for candidates. So that's for us where we're starting. It is like, how do we leverage the stuff that we've got? There's a lot of noise out there around AI. I don't know if you found this, but everybody is telling you that they've got an AI solution at the moment. I mean, I'm an athlete, I'm on Strava, and they've introduced an athlete intelligence AI app that just basically tells me the things that I already know about my data. So I have no idea why they've bothered, apart from the fact that they can say they've done AI. I think there is quite a lot of that happening in the industry, so that's kind of one of those, spending the next 12 months very much kind of trying to navigate through that and understand where the value is, to be able to, your point, allow us to be the humans, to put the candidates first, help our hiring managers to do that, remove some of the really basic admin tasks, to free us up.
Right.
Yeah, and I find these sort of like automations and things like this sort of driving those refusal sort of letters, your silver medalists, people who just don't quite make it. One of the things that we're trying to create is some talent pools and dynamic talent waves, where if someone didn't make the cut, the automation can put out something that says something more like, you didn't quite make the cut, but we're putting you into a special talent pool. You'll be facing 60, 70 more inclusive employers, and leaving that candidate feeling a sense of hope for the future. And it's really great for your brand, because like you said, people go back home and it's never their fault why they didn't get the job. It's definitely the employer. But this time around, you find people be saying stuff like, look, I didn't get the role, but they're in this place, and now I'm being approached by a whole bunch of other inclusive employers. Again, so that's really, people have really got an appetite for that now.
Yeah, there's some really interesting uses around how you can bring out feedback for candidates in a more automated way using some of the AI. So if you've got good interview notes, rather than you having to scroll through them all, there's tools that are starting to do that, so that your candidate takes away something from your process. So I think those kind of applications are quite exciting from a candidate experience perspective. But if you don't have big budgets and loads of tech, it's kind of, what can you do with what your existing systems? Most of the ATSs out there are already starting to deploy new things into their system. So it'll be exciting to see how that plays out.
And it's a great way as well.
I just want to bring you right into this part of my list. Great questions come through. It's something that was ringing through my brain when you spoke earlier. You talked about your wife who struggles with SJTs.
Yeah.
It's a great question here, but that was more on the assessment side, but it's from Darren at the ONS. It says, how do we overcome the potential disadvantages some candidates from digitally deprived or less digitally aware backgrounds will experience due to the increased use of AI in recruitment? Have you got any particular strong thoughts on that? And then I'd like to get off the AI train.
Yeah. I mentioned this earlier. My partner's autistic and has ADHD and has never got a job through those traditional pathways, the situational judgment test, all this sort of stuff. They really trip her up. Yeah, she's a lecturer at university at work on speech and languages taught around the world, and it's like, how do people like this struggle to get through these pathways, And when I talk to her, it's always that we got in through a friend or through some other angle. And then, I looked at some of the statistics, and it's like 16% of people with autism will get a job, the rest will be left out. I think it's moved up maybe to 20-30 now. But there's still a huge amount of them who are highly, highly qualified, and struggling. So we use that sort of programmatic media, because we've done a bit of research and found out that they were in chat rooms and forums and on Spotify listening to the podcast about how crap it is trying to get a job with autism. So we use that programmatic media and go and find them where they are on their socials, where they haven't given up, and bring them back into play. And this has been really, really valuable stuff. We've helped many of our clients find candidates who, because you won't find them on, what's the point on being on Reed, LinkedIn, all these places? What's the point if you spent years, it doesn't work for you? And so what we don't realise is that there are swathes of people out there suffering, trying to get in, and so we do advisories and things like this to actually see what that candidate pathway looks like. Get people to do some sort of, like ghost sort of applications and things like this, and run these assessments and say, look, people with autism getting tripped up here, people with dyslexia is getting tripped up here, etc., etc. And you're screaming out saying, we want more of these people. Well, these are the things in place, and one of the things that I'd urge everyone to look at, even if it feels like it's going really well, is have a look at that candidate pathway, get someone to really check it out, to see what types of system impacted groups are being held out. Because once you find that out, you can reduce those barriers, and you'd be surprised at the flood that people are getting in. We've put a framework in place for one of our clients, and when I said, how many people did you get through? They said 110 people they'd got in as a result for that year. And 3 months later, they said that's gone up to 270. So that's fantastic that people are now being able to get through who wouldn't normally get those opportunities.
I'm going to move on from AI. There's a good question from Anonymous, but it says, how can TA teams position themselves in scaling businesses to showcase their business value further than putting bums on seats? I just want to add here, I don't think this is just a problem for scaling businesses. Certainly my experience in the last 5 weeks, I've really struggled to show business value to the point where they cut ahead. Claire, you mentioned that you'll do more with less. You've got this redeployment versus hire mentality. Do you want to start us off on this one?
Yeah, I don't have the answer, sorry. But it's, it is a battle, and it's one of my frustrations I'm having in the business at the moment is that in order for me to do my job really well, I need real clarity, really, on what is a vacancy, can I hire it, what skills do you need? Now, those all sound like really basic things, but sometimes our business, the FTSE 250 business, struggles to articulate those things to me. So there's an element of us as TA leaders needing to influence the conversation with more senior people to ensure that we're getting that information to set our teams up to succeed. So I'm doing that through working with our CPO, working with our people business partners to get a bit closer to those senior stakeholders. I think the wider piece around mobility and those skill sets, so I think as TA professionals, we're on the front end. We have that market intel, we have that first point of contact with candidates, so it's kind of leveraging that as you've got insight, you've got information, how can you play that back into the business and really sort of partnering with your stakeholders to start to show that you are more knowledgeable maybe than they give you the first thought of. So kind of arming yourself with insight data is a really good starting point. So, being able to show what the market looks like for the roles that you're hiring, really starting to talk to that shows a level of maturity in your thinking that helps you to show commerciality as well. And then how that translates into a wider conversation. If your market is tight, that then helps you to kind of enter that conversation around, well, what else can we do? We might not be able to hire this role externally. What else can we do? So I don't think I've answered the question fully.
No, you have.
Some of the thinking points.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised there's more chat around internal mobility, because I do see, if we've got these huge volumes of people externally looking and we're experiencing this question here about easy apply, I think it might have disappeared. But, we've got the ability for candidates to quickly apply now. It's filling up our ATSs, our inboxes. One of the strategies I'd be looking at is, well, do we focus on internal mobility? Can we do this, and be busier recruiting internally rather than externally, creating these career opportunities for people, seeing that succession or, L&D opportunities before even going externally. And I'm very surprised.
That's essentially where we're kind of landing, is that actually it sounds quite old school in some ways, but we're going to go back to probably having an internal window for most of our vacancies first, so that we really exhaust that and we really challenge ourselves and our managers to say, well, where could this skill set be internally before we turn the tap on externally?
And it doesn't bode well for the UK economy with that, because it means there'll be a lot of people potentially out of work, which leads me really neatly to this question, I guess, about the recent changes in the budget, about how the changes to employees' day one rights of budget announcements impacted your organisations. Liz, I think you're perfectly positioned to at least have a view on this, given the scale of what you do.
So we have worked out that it's going to cost us as a business around £3 million with NI changes. That is not just the national minimum wage, because we're actually not in a bad state when it comes down to the unskilled workers. Even I don't think the class as unskilled workers getting paid minimum wage. We're actually finding that we're getting hit more with the government changing the 9,600 to the 5,000 and so on and so forth. The other little hidden costs that they didn't shout out about. Do you know what? From Touchwood, hopefully, a point of view, with everything that we've got bubbling as a business, I don't think it's going to affect us that much when it comes down to turnover. Employee day rights from day one, fair? Why not? Why can't we have a little bit more as a business? You know, why can't, as an employee, have a little bit more? I think our managers are just going to have to deal with the change, but we are in quite an ever-changing market where we're just going to have to educate them. We've got plenty of time. We've got 3-4 months to get through to them. You know, we've got circa 200-300 managers. I think from a commerciality point of view, if I'm brutal, finding a spare £3 million is a little bit of a task, but I don't foresee us having an issue with it, because we've got plenty of people within the business that need to go and do their job, which sounds a little bit harsh, and go and get the extra money, because they are the commercial people. And I'm hoping that when we go and bid for business, we do speak to them. I speak to them on a weekly basis along with one of my colleagues. And I actually say, don't forget, we still need to give everyone a pay rise next year. Don't forget, we still need to do this. You still need to add this into the commerciality side of things. And I think I'm just now waffling, not really answering the question. Some of the employment changes, so don't forget, I wouldn't say they're really impacting now. I think they're on the cards. They're not in place. 2026 is when they're due to come into place. So sick pay from day one, so on and so forth. Someone can sue you as soon as they walk in the building and leave within an hour later. It's not there yet. The main thing, as far as I'm focusing on at the minute, is budget announcements, what's focusing, where we're going to find the spare £3 million from. But, do you know what? We've been through worse. We've been through COVID in the last 4 years, guys. We've been through Brexit, a little bit of minimum wage. Personally, I'm not flapping. I'm only flapping about doing the numbers and trying to figure out who, what, where and when, and then trying to get people a decent pay rise so we can actually all live. That's actually our biggest concern, actually paying the right money for the right person. It's actually paying the right wages, which might sound a bit weird, but one of the things we do internally is we benchmark a lot of the roles. So I work with one of my colleagues, Karen. She benchmarks with me. She does the analysis. We look at the market, because if someone's going to leave, I want to know that if I need to give them £3-4 grand more, well, it'll cost me £6-7 grand to replace them. By the time we've spent our time, we've spent our budget, we've spent the manager's time, and so on and so forth. Personally, I'll be spending more than £3 million if I get my way. With the driver crisis 3-4 years ago, we cost the business £10 million because they needed to back up the wages. You pay for what you get. So,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Chance.
I just want to quickly jump back to the question about the bums on seats thing, because it's about attitude. The attitude needs to shift, you know. And I always urge people to just stop recruiting and start changing lives, you know, and have that mindset change in place on that, because that's really important. I mean, currently we're going into that jewellery shop and we're buying that ready cut diamond, all sparkly and nice, and the jeweller's got a lovely smile on their face. But we know some of them are zirconias and cubic stones, you know, because mum wrote the CV or ChatGTP wrote that CV, you know. And I sort of urge people to actually think about the system impacted people out there, because they are diamonds in the rough. They are exactly diamonds in the rough. They'll need a little polish and they'll sparkle like every other diamond. But the thing they have in common is that they are both resilient. It's pressure, years of pressure, that has made those diamonds as special as we know them. And it's years of pressure that has made our system-impacted candidates filled with resilience and grit. And we know grit is the #1 predictor for success. Resilience alongside emotional intelligence and the ability to improvise in tough situations. So sometimes you invest in some of these candidates, and it's proven, there's data to prove that they work harder, they stay longer, and they're great for your reputation. So it really is about looking at it in a completely different way. And then you've got that whole bums on seats thing sort of out of the way. Your values start to shine through. And believe me, candidates can see it. Candidates can see the personality of an organisation. And I've asked a few people, I said, if your organisation was a person, what type of personality would it have? Would you bring that person home to meet your family or hang out with your group of diverse friends? Because if the answer's not yet yes, then there's work to be done there. And that's how you get to really shine through, especially Gen Z. They can see through the BS, believe me. So if you do those things, it sort of glows from out of your organisation.
Chance, you just said there you encourage people to stop recruiting and take a step back. I completely understand where you're coming from. We've got a question up here which says, how can TA teams influence historically stubborn C-suite and hiring manager just want people and they want them now? They don't want to talk about flexible work and inclusive hiring, employee branding. They don't want to hear it. I just need it. There's someone in my team, we're a man down and I've got a target to hit. What advice would you give the team? And that goes to all of you.
Do you know what? We face these barriers all the time. We talk to the wonderful people like yourselves, and then they go back and go to C-suite, and C-suite's like talk to the handle, And so what we do with the people who we're talking to is say to them, look, don't go back and tell C-suite, bring us with you, and we will put that business case out there. We will win the hearts and minds, and I can tell you it's so far it's 10 out of 10, but I'll just say 9 times out of 10, C-suite end up saying, why haven't we been doing this? And when can we get cracking? I promise you that. So I would say find the people, and I'm always happy to for free, because I just want to change lives out here in this country of ours, and just get the right people in front of C-suite, get them into play. And we can do that, and we can do that as a collective. We can, do a lunch and learn, get C-suite into play, or a breakfast seminar, and really get those high impact keynote speeches. They hear the lived experience, give them the business case in that certain way, because it is always hard to translate. We'll talk to people, they'll go back to C-suite and say blah blah blah, but it's lost in translation a lot of the time. So definitely, I'm up for coming in the room with anyone who wants to talk to those. We do it a lot, and it really does shift the mindset to do this. And there is always a business case for it as well. So there's a balance there that takes place.
Yeah, thanks, Chance.
We've all come up against the I need somebody immediately challenge, which, we will, as a team, we can respond to that. We can put a bum on a seat, but I always will caveat it with almost like those I told you so moments. If we just constantly put bums on seats or just fill that role so quickly that we haven't thought about anything else, then you're going to be constantly filling that role. So I think my advice is just to be tenacious about keep kind of chipping away at some of the longer term strategy pieces. You might not have C-suite buy-in, but there's a lot you can do within TA and within your team to change some of the processes behind the scenes, to work with more diverse pipelines, all those sorts of things. There's lots of little things that you can do that will pay off longer term, and I think it's trying to sort of shift the mindset that longer term strategies do pay off in terms of retention. Finding the right people for the long term is going to have that business benefit.
I would say I started at Gregory 7 years ago, and I went there for a quiet life. I know. I went from agency to in-house, and they had 20, 30 vacancies. Well, they lied. They didn't know their numbers. They were doing all temp to perm. They wanted somebody yesterday. So on and so forth. It was bumps on seats. It was all sorts. But over the 7 years, once the team's expanded, it's building up the relationships with the managers, actually explaining, if I'm honest, we don't shout out about what we do, we just do it, we just get on with it. They give us a vacancy, we go through the job description, we do our little thing, within 24, 48 hours, I've got interviews arranged, so on and so forth. We don't actually say, well, we've done this, and this. And if I'm honest, that's probably our biggest problem, is changing the mindset of the managers, so they actually understand what we actually do. We do get bums on seats, we get bums on seats most days, but if I'm honest, now what's happened is over time, the managers actually will come to us before they even need the person. As soon as that person's resigned or they try and persuade the person to, unresign isn't even a word, retract their notice, they've started to come to us more for advice, and that's one of the biggest things that they do. It's taken a long time, don't get me wrong, and there's still work to do, but I think it's perseverance, it's understanding the passion for the job. I love it when you have an apprentice come on board that's in their 30s, because it's not their first career, it's their second career. You see them get their Class 2 licence, you then see them get their Class 1 licence, then they move into the transport operations, then they do this and then they do that. We encourage people to transfer internally, do all sorts. But you know what? If they actually understood how difficult it was to fill a vacancy, I think they might actually be a little bit more sympathetic towards us. So I think it's probably us actually being a little bit more less modest and just getting on with it. But it's actually, and if we sat in their roles, we wouldn't be able to do it. If they sat in our roles, they wouldn't be able to do our job either. So I think it's them understanding it's got to work both ways.
We're going to have to move on from there because we've got 3 minutes left and a whole heap of questions here. I just want to make sure that we're picking up on some of the other bits. I quite like this one here, which in the middle, which says, how do you see the role of attraction changing in the next year? So if we're talking about internal progression, we're talking about talent development, we're talking about much more internal focus, what does that mean for attraction? I know from experience that we put a lot more effort into our external advertising than we ever did internally. And I'm not saying that was right, I think it's downright wrong. But we spent far more effort and energy and time thinking about external rather than internal. Is that going to change over the next year? Do we need to be a bit more, persuasive in how we encourage talent internally to move? What does that mean for our roles?
I think our roles have evolved over the last couple of years especially. I would say that we need to, and I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, we need to make our adverts sexy. That's what I tell my hiring managers, make your job sexy and attractive. Because if you sit there and if you don't catch that candidate within the first couple of lines on Indeed or Total Jobs or CV or whatever, you're going to lose them. So we need to sex everything up, no matter how much I'm sorry if it's offended over, I don't mean to. We are more proactive now than we've ever had to be. We normally used to be able to just stick an advert on, we'd have applications. We can't do that anymore. So we're now having to go back to being basically an agency. We are now a recruitment agency, but we're in-house. And that's probably the easiest thing to say, that it's not our market. I can foresee it getting harder, sorry. Can I see us being in more demand? Yes, I actually can, especially within our industries. I can see the talent acquisition side being more required across businesses as the candidate market keeps changing. But it all depends on what happens with good old national minimum wage next year.
So one of the things that we're looking at the moment is how we leverage our recruitment system better internally. So to your point, Lee, I think it's the same, trying to apply the same skill set that we use externally to our internal candidates. So we're a business of 2,500 people. That's 2,500 potential candidates. So we're just starting to look at exploring how we can leverage talent communities, but for internal talent, and how we start to tag people, how we start to almost take like a CRM mindset internally. Really, really baby steps, but and quite basic. You know, like there's loads of really fancy softwares out there that do this stuff, but actually your ATS is probably a good starting point, or a spreadsheet, or your HR systems. But it's kind of leveraging that sort of headhunter mindset almost internally. That's where I can see that we might start to be able to add a lot more value internally, so that we're really proactively seeking out people who already work for us, because they're going to be the best people to keep growing the business. Is my focus.
Yes. Do you have any thoughts on how we can make that internal hiring process more equitable?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we lead on these job ads, for instance, with all the criteria, and that scares people off a lot of the time. You know, I think you should just lead with the heart of your business, what you're doing that's good, your organisational culture. Let people know that, you know, we'll take care of you. Belonging is everything to us. You know, really shout that sort of stuff. You will capture particularly diverse and system impacted candidates like that, because that's what's appealing to people. They want to know they're going to a good home, you know, with a nice culture. So talk about that and have the rest of it, you know, underneath, or keep it really short, that whole criteria piece, because a lot of neurodiverse candidates, people, I'm dyslexic, you know, and when it gets too technical, it doesn't mean I can't do all of that stuff. It's just when you throw all of that in my face, I'm like, oh my God, this organisation's just about this. I didn't hear anything about the culture. I didn't feel as though I'm going to somewhere with a good home. So it's important to get that out there from the outset if you really want to attract people.
Perfect, thank you. Sounds like we got a lot to plan for in 2025. I think we solved it all today, and there was the purpose of the discussion. But I hope a lot of that, you know, I guess, resonated with you. Liz, you seem to think that the TA market has got a bright future next year. As somebody who's currently looking at the job market, I'm seeing 100 applications within an hour of ads going live. I'm seeing reduced salaries. I'm seeing easy applies being turned off just to cover that off, just to make it harder. I agree, I'd be doing the same thing. Does that change your mind, or do you actually think, no, we've got more to offer? And if you think that the TA market is positive, is it going to be much more at a transactional versus a strategic level?
Oh God, right, there's about 5 questions in one. TA market, I
I
think...
need you to answer this in 2 minutes as well. Both all of it.
Good. TA market, I think, will be more buoyant, but I actually think that all of us need to actually shout to our internal agencies, external agencies, what we do. And I think, I don't know if anybody else is, I fill a vacancy, I just tell them I filled a vacancy. I don't tell them all the work and all the slogging in the evenings and everything like that I've spent actually trying to help them fill the vacancy. I don't see any of that. So we are awful at that. If the market will keep going, because I think the candidate market will go higher, so people's turnover will get up and go higher, and you will find the counter offers will become more president, like what I've already had. I've had one this morning alone for a job that took me 8 weeks to fill. So I'm fuming right now with the manager, so I'll go deal with him later. But from that side of things, I foresee that. What was the rest of the questions?
Well, I'm just curious about what your hopes are for TA in the next 12 months. Claire, do you have a view on this?
Let me say one thing. I hope that we're more valued. If I'm honest, I think if we didn't do what we did, people wouldn't actually have a business. That's my attitude towards it, and I tell that to our MD. If we don't get the people in the door and the right people in the door, then what have they got? If we don't attract the people with the passion that we have and the drive for our business, what have they got?
Okay.
If I'm brutal, we are the front and you are the face of your business. You are the first port of call. If you can't sell your business to the candidates, then there's a problem. And that's what I think we all need to remember. You can tell the passion and drive. I might have bad days. I might drink wine every Friday and Saturday night. But from that side of things, I still love who I work for. Does that make sense?
Yep. Claire, the relevance of TA for next year?
Yeah, we are really relevant. I think we have a bit of an existential crisis sometimes about what we do because there's so much change happening, but I think you've just got to lean into that change and be curious about all the things that are changing. Don't be scared and try new things, do different things. And to your point earlier on, actually, I heard you say tell stories. I think we need to be better at telling our story internally.
Yeah. Chance from the outside looking in. Final thought. What does the future look like for us?
I think the future's always bright in my mind because I'm just always optimistic about it. But I think, you know, TAs, you know, you want to talk to C-suite, talk to them about social value. They'll understand that language. People like myself or James Fellows over there, if you raise your hands, definitely talk to him. But go in and actually, you know, bring the human touch into it. But I think that more and more people are starting to realise that you can't have a football team and everyone's strikers because you'll lose your defence and lose the game, you know. And it's like these superhero films. You know, you wouldn't watch a superhero film where everyone has got the same superpower because it get boring after 15 minutes. The very reason why they're able to take down the baddie is because they aggregate all their different superpowers to become a force to be reckoned with. You know, and that's what our workplaces need to look like. It's just understanding where those superpowers are coming from different system impacted groups. You know, if I'm dyslexic, shove me off to the marketing team. I've got a creative mind, biz dev. You know, and my partner's autistic and has ADHD, can focus on one thing for long hours. Software development might be great. It's just understanding where those superpowers go. And I think more and more people are learning that as we go along. Gotcha.
Well, on that note of superpowers, a big, huge thank you to our fantastic three.